Today we're going to review the concept of adding and subtracting integers. We're going to go over the actual algebraic reasoning behind it, but as we do that, I'm going to share with you verbally some of my tips and tricks, so be sure to jot that down in the notes as well, okay? So after this, you should be able to add and subtract integers and rational numbers. And next week, we're going to get into rational numbers in detail. But what you have to keep in mind is the rules of addition and subtraction, what is an opposite, and what is the additive inverse. Remember, we can use a number line to add real numbers. Adding a positive number, we move to the right. Adding a negative number, we move to the left. Now, while this topic is adding and subtracting, what you have to keep in mind, the rules of integers for subtraction is that we change them to addition. So really, we're always adding when this comes about. Okay, so let's just use a number line. This is always something you can revert back to, and you can always use a number line if you forget the rules. Will it take a little longer? Yes. But in the end, would you get the right answer? Probably. So here's how this works. If you look at problem A, you have -6. What that means is we're going to start at -6. I'm adding a +9. Remember, positives, we move to the right 9 spaces. That puts me at 3. So -6 plus 9 is 3. Okay? I think of this as money. If I owe someone $6 and then I just earn 9, I only really have 3 because I have to give 6 of it away to that person. I think of negatives as me giving away money and positives as me having it. That's just how my brain does it. Okay, so let's go look at this next one. We have 4 plus a -7. What that means is I'm going to start at a +4 on my number line and move left 7 spaces because I was adding a negative. That ended, my arrow ends at -3. So 4 plus -7 is -3. We see how this is coming about on a number line, how I would do it. Okay, my last one. It says I'm going to start at -3. I'm adding a positive, so I'm moving in a positive direction. So I'm going to move 8 spaces. That leaves me at 5. So -3 plus 8 is 5. Now, this is doable when there's small digits like this, but I don't always want to do that. So here's the rules of addition without a number line. So if I'm adding 2 numbers with the same sign, I'm just going to add those numbers. I add their absolute values, basically. That's what the rule says. And then I write what their sign was. So if it's 2 positives, I add them and write a positive answer. If it's 2 negatives, I add them and write a negative answer. Now what happens is when my signs are opposite, so 1 positive, 1 negative, I'm basically going to subtract their absolute values. Remember, the absolute value is just the number. No sign, not positive, not negative. But after I've subtracted them, I then write the sign of the number with the larger absolute. So let's go see what that looks like. What do we mean by all of this? Okay, so let's take a look at this one. If I look at A, I have 1.4 plus -2.6 plus 3.1. So I have 3 terms there. So how I'm going to handle this is I'm just going to focus on my first 2, and I'm going to do my rule with those 2. So if I go over to the side, I'm just subtracting those 2 numbers. Remember, I'm going to take their absolute values and subtract them. So when I do this, I'm left with 1.2. But I have to go back and I have to look at my 2 numbers. And I have to see that the 2.6 was the larger one, and it's negative. So that means my 1.2 is really negative, not positive. You with me? Okay, so I now have negative 1.2 plus 3.1. Well, this is the same thing I just did. I have to take their absolute values and just subtract, so that I end up with 1.9. But I have to go back, which absolute value was bigger, and that would be the 3.1, and it was positive. So my final answer is a positive 1.9. Okay, so fractions. I know everyone's kind of scared of fractions, but I can use the commutative property, meaning I can rewrite this, and I can put my fraction terms together just to make this easier on me. And if you notice, I have a negative 1/2 plus a 1/2. That's going to come up later in this lesson, but if I have a 1 and a negative 1, I end up with, you got it, a 0. So my fractions are now gone, and I really just have 0 plus 3. That we've been doing since elementary school, 3. So what a lot of us like to do is freak out when we see a fraction. But take a step back and break things apart. Rewrite it. Those were all addition. I'm allowed to reorder addition and keep the value the same. All right, so my last one, there are 2 negatives. So remember what my rule says. Go back up on your notes. It says to write the absolute value, just add them. So what is 11 plus 7? That's easy. I get 18. But go back. Both of them were negative. So I'm going to write a negative. And I have a negative 18. Okay? So hopefully that's coming back to us from 7th grade. Now, subtraction without a number line. And this is what I said. Even though we are subtracting, what I do is I change it to an addition problem, and I write the opposite of the sign behind it, okay? What you have to remember moving forward this school year and in Algebra 1 and geometry, subtraction means negative. Negative means subtraction. That's going to help you go through this a little quicker and not have to rewrite it all the time. But until you get that, you can do this. So let's look at negative 7 minus 6. I can rewrite that as negative 7 plus negative 6. I then have the same sign. I just add their absolute values, gives me 13. But then when I write my final answer, I have to put the negative there. Now, the way I look at this problem is I see 2 negative numbers. I have a negative 7 and I have a negative 6. I'm going to add them to give me negative 13. That's how my brain does it. I don't have to rewrite it, but I've been doing this a lot. The more you do it, the easier things are going to get. Just like this one. So if I have negative 5/4 plus, well, I'm writing the opposite. So when you see a subtraction and a negative, it really becomes a plus. So now I have opposite signs. So my rule says to just subtract them. So I'd get 4/4, which we know is 1, but go back up. What was bigger, the 5/4 or the 1/4? The 5/4 was bigger. So in reality, the 5/4 had a negative sign. So I don't have a positive 1 as my answer. I have a negative 1 as my answer. Okay? And last but not least, some of you might be able to do this already. You probably have figured this one out. 20 minus 21. But if you need to go through the process, you can rewrite it. So I end up having 21 minus 20, and I get 1. But go back. 21 we know is bigger, and that had a negative sign. So my answer is actually negative 1. Okay? Does everyone see how this pattern's going? And by all means, once you start getting it, and I hope you start getting it, and you don't have to do all this extra work here, it will make for other things we do this year a little easier. Now we did it in the past couple slides, but the opposites, they're pair positive and it's negative, okay? They're the additive inverses of each other, meaning if I add them together, I get 0. So if you look at this, we kind of paired up their opposites. So the opposite of -5 is 5. If I add those two values together, it gives me 0, okay? 6 and -6. If I add those two values together, I also get 0. I'm at square one. So being able to recognize those in a problem will help this go a little quicker. So let's evaluate each expression. When you hear the word evaluate, it means tell me its value, okay? What's its worth, basically? So how I would approach this one, I would first rewrite it because I've got double signs and it just gets confusing. So if I rewrite it as 3 plus 4 plus -4 plus 8, I'm hoping you're signaling something and you're seeing it. You're seeing additive inverses here. If I have a +4 and a -4, that'll just end up being 0. And you can do this. Since it's all addition, you can do this. Those will cancel each other out because they're opposites. They only cancel when they're opposites. Then that just leaves me basically 3 plus 8, which is 11. So now let's look over here. If we rewrite this, I have -9 plus -2 plus -11. Start on your left side first. You'd get, okay, we're going to focus on those two. We're going to get -11 plus -11. Hold up here. A lot of people right away go, oh, they're opposites, it equals 0. No, they're not. They are both negatives. So they don't cancel each other out. They just add to a bigger negative. So you have to slow yourself down and not rush things. And basically, it's attention to detail that we often don't have. Last, I have -12 plus -11 plus 17. I'm going to focus on my -12 plus -11 first. They're both negatives, so I can just add them and get a bigger negative. That makes my life easier. Now these two are opposites. So if I do -23 plus 17, I'm really subtracting them. When I subtract, I get 6, but it's not a +6 because what was bigger? That's right, the 23. So really, my answer is -6. Okay? And then last is a word problem. And a lot of people make mistakes on word problems because we don't read it through. I have a rule of 3. Read it 3 times before you do anything. The average height of an NBA player is 79 inches, while the height of an average man is 69 inches. What is the difference between their heights? Okay, well, let's go back for a minute. The average height of an NBA player is 79 inches. The height of an average man is 69 inches. So that 79 and 69 are going to come into play. And it says, what is the difference between their heights? Okay, so you got to ask yourself, what am I doing? Well, I'm going to look for the difference between their heights. Well, there's a key word there, difference. Difference should signal to you subtraction. So go back through. What are you going to subtract? That's right, 79 minus 69. That is going to give us 10 inches. So we knew we had to take the absolute value because they just wanted to know the difference. It didn't matter which one came first. They just want to know how far apart the two values were. Okay? So it's in your best interest to, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below because there'll be new content constantly. or comment below if you have any questions that might help others.